I love what he says here. Love what you do and do what you love, and learn the art of constantly enjoying every minute of your life. But I have a feeling he knew about suffering. Otherwise, how to explain that when he was very young, he was around 25 or so, or maybe even less a little bit, when he started to work for Le Corbusier in Paris, he developed colitis, which is a very serious stomach ache. And apparently Le Corbusier sent him to the doctor immediately. So I think and you can tell from his face. Now in this picture, he is not smiling, but I think he earned the art of constantly enjoying every minute of life. And perhaps I know I have to learn that art too, because I don't know it. But I think we can learn from this half guru, half yogi man, because I think he is a wise man who lived long enough to teach us not just about architecture, but about the art of living. So yes, again, love what you do and do what you love. I know it's easy to say and it's difficult to do, but if you don't love what you do, it's misery. And and you have to, the relationship between doing and loving what you are doing should be there from the very beginning. Otherwise, yes, life is a pain. Okay, so he was born 93 years ago today on August 26. Now, those two initials stand for, this is his full name, Balkrishna Vithaldas Doshi. But he is known shortly as Doshi or B.V. Doshi. I start by reading you a very short poem by Le Corbusier, which was actually given by Le Corbusier to Doshi. And I learned about it from Doshi. There is an interview with Doshi centered on Le Corbusier, where Doshi, who worked and knew very well Le Corbusier, tells various stories about the master of modern architecture. And this poem is actually revealing not just about Le Corbusier, but I think also about himself. And that's why I said I could call this presentation The Architect as a Listening Child. Just a second, let me, I'm afraid I forgot to activate I always do this, the recording. No, it is recording, sorry. No, because it happened many times. I failed to record in a way, the most important, presentations and gatherings. So I will read you this short poem, and I think this short poem is an invitation to all of us to live fully, to live creatively, to live even dangerously, but to enjoy life, just as Doshi asked us to do. So, the acrobat. An acrobat is no puppet. He devotes his life to activities in which, in perpetual danger of death, he performs extraordinary movement of infinite difficulty with disciplined exactitude and precision, free to break his neck and his bones and be crushed. Nobody asks him to do this. Nobody owes him any thanks. He lives in an extraordinary world of the acrobat. Result, most certainly, he does things which others cannot. So, in a way, I think he became, maybe he was not at the beginning, but he became an acrobat himself. And I think every creator in any field, not just in architecture, of course, is some kind of an acrobat. Because nobody asks you to write a symphony or to paint or to draw, nobody. But you do it because there is an inner urge to do it. And many people deprive themselves of many things, including food, in the name of art. So those who say poetry goes through the stomach, like my parents told me when I was a child, are only in part true. Of course, we all have to eat something, we all have to survive, but I also know cases of great artists and great poets who wrote poetry and who painted their paintings, although they had almost nothing to eat. Because as Louis Kahn said, spirit in will to express can make the great sun seem small. So if you are animated by that spirit, sometimes, and for a short while perhaps, you can neglect even eating a day or two. It's okay, because you are serving higher goals or higher gods. So Le Corbusier was an acrobat himself, and I think Doshi became kind of an acrobat himself. This is the man in his maybe, you know, less, you know, happy posture, but we'll see other pictures by him. He said that I think architecture is a matter of transformation of all adverse situations into favorable conditions. And I think he's right. I'm not sure. It depends what you mean by adverse and by favorable, because, for example, Peter Eisenman thought that actually an architecture that is not that is comforting is not the architecture that moves us the most. So, you know, for some people, you could call them masochists, like Le Corbusier himself. What was favorable was actually adverse. Maybe you know that Le Corbusier, his own little office on Rue de Sèvres in Paris, his private room was a room which was 2 meters 28 by 2 meters 28 by 2 meters and something else, without a window. So it was like a small bathroom. And at one moment, for some time, he painted, I read, he painted the walls in black. So can you imagine? Anyone would say this is adverse, but for him it was favorable, because it was in a way confronting the limit of life, confronting death, and that's when he became the most creative. But I do believe that indeed architecture is a matter of transformation. You transform matter into metaphysics, you know, to talk in, you know, maybe exalted terms. To begin with, you know, you start with matter, you start with heaviness, you start with raw materials, and then you build a cathedral or you build a temple. So you transform raw matter into spiritual matter, into a song, actually, because I said it before and I say it again. I think the great French poet Paul Valéry was right in his little book called Eupalinos ou l'architecte, or Eupalinos or the architect. He said there are 3 kinds of builders. Someone who puts a stone above another stone, this is a builder. Then is the second one who places a stone above another stone and makes them talk or speak. And this is the master builder. And the third one is the one who places a stone above another stone and makes them sing. And his name, he said, is Eupalinos ou l'architecte, or the architect. So you transform inanimate matter into singing matter. So of course it is a matter of transformation. Okay, we move forward. A few more pictures with Doshi. So again, you know, he had a very, very rich life. And you could say he was lucky. Yes, he was lucky, but also maybe he made his luck somehow. He says, design is nothing but a humble understanding of materials, a natural instinct for solutions and respect for nature. Notice, please, the word humble. You know, architects in general are not very humble, and the act of erecting a building is not really a very humble act, but it is refreshing to see that a major architect of today mentions from the very beginning humbleness, which I think is important. Doshi and Le Corbusier. Now we'll see pictures of Doshi and Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier truly had a big effect on him. He met him when he was 23. Le Corbusier unfortunately didn't pay him. The story goes like this. Doshi learned about a colleague of his in the college he was attended in Bombay, that he was going to London. That colleague asked him if he doesn't want to join him. So Doshi went with him to London, and there was a conference of Siam and Congrès International d'Architecture Moderne, where Le Corbusier was to speak. And there Doshi met someone from his office and asked him if Le Corbusier wouldn't like to hire him. And Le Corbusier, said yes at one point, but I cannot pay you. So Doshi accepted this failed negotiation. So he started to work, and he worked in Paris for Le Corbusier 3 years, and then he returned to India, but he continued to meet and to work in a way for and with Le Corbusier because of the buildings built by Le Corbusier in India, first in Chandigarh and then in Ahmedabad. Here is a famous picture with the two of them. I think they had a close relationship, Also, I was thinking about it, like strange so-called coincidences. Maybe but Le Corbusier had only one functioning eye. I think the left eye. The right eye, he lost his sight in the right eye when he was 28. And interestingly, the revered grandfather of Doshi also had one eye. He lost his sight in one of his eyes. So I don't know. I don't know if Le Corbusier knew about this. I learned about this in an interview with Doshi, but there was a connection between Le Corbusier and Doshi, I think. And I like the expression on the faces of both. The guru is drawing something, but you can tell he's not acting out like someone who knows it all. And on the other hand, look at the seriousness of the face of Doshi. He's absorbed. He wants to learn. He's intense. He's curious. He wants to learn. Yes, he's that listening child that is so difficult to be, and I think it's so important to be. And then this is in India already. Doshi is with his back towards us with a dark, coat or shirt. A little bit strange, the hat that Le Corbusier had, I think, is rather American, and I don't think he was very fond of certain things in America. But anyway, here he sports a different hat. And you see Doshi, he also has some kind of strange hat, almost like a baseball hat on his head, showing him, drawing or something. And then again, a picture of the guru and Doshi as a young man. So it must have been truly a great occasion and a great chance, to meet so often Le Corbusier and talk with him, eat with him, build with him. It must have been very inspiring. So in that respect, he was lucky, but he didn't eat, or he didn't eat enough, because he said in Paris, there were times when he ate just olives and bread because he didn't have money, because the master wouldn't pay him. Anyway, the master himself maybe wasn't very rich, but I still think he should have paid him a little bit. Anyway, great accomplishments require great sacrifices. So Doshi made those sacrifices, and we have to take our own hats off our heads to salute and acknowledge these beneficial sacrifices. You see, he was very young.
Those hats are for sun protection, I guess.
Well, of course.
For no other reason. Yeah, they are just to protect your eyes, because those times I think so many sunglasses were not around, so they wore hats to protect the eyes.
Right, right. Well, the climate in India, of course, requires some care. Plus, Le Corbusier was already over 65. So, um, anyway. But I like again, do you see the listening child in Doshi? Who would have thought, he himself, of course, would not have thought that one day he will receive the Pritzker Prize in architecture. But if you are a listening child, if you absorb the wisdom and the knowledge and the advices of those you respect, you have a chance to grow. You might not grow at that level, you might not get the Pritzker Prize, but it doesn't matter. What does matter is to achieve your highest potential. This is what matters. Also, very interestingly, I witnessed when he said, Doshi said in an interview, he actually believes that a human destiny is not, is kind of already a priori written in by the gods in a way that first that there are no accidents, that everything that happens is kind of governed by some cosmic forces. So this is a very almost a mystical perception of reality and of life. And I like this fact that he was able and he's able to combine what we call the real with what we call the unreal or the imaginary or the fantastic. And we'll talk more about this. Now we arrive at the yogi. So we saw pictures with the guru and the architect, meaning, well, they were both architects. Although, in a way, both were not architects because none of them had diplomas. You know very well, Le Corbusier never studied in a school. Doshi studied in a school, but a school of art, and which he didn't finish. So I learned in an interview that he said, I'm an uneducated man. I don't have a diploma. But isn't it beautiful? I mean, this man, just like Tadao Ando, this, because when you have passion and when you give yourself totally to what you love, of course, you might not get the Pritzker Prize. It's actually irrelevant if you get it or not, but you achieve your highest potential. So these people didn't run for diplomas. They understood. I mean, Doshi is a very educated man, and so was Le Corbusier in a deep sense, not in an appearance sense. They didn't love appearances. They could have obtained those diplomas, but that's not what interested Doshi, and that's not what interested Le Corbusier. But Doshi had the chance again, but he made this change. It's not that it came from the blue sky. He was born in India. What is he doing with Kahn? What was he doing with Le Corbusier? So he took part in the creation of his own life. So the guru was Le Corbusier, as he himself said, and Kahn was the yogi. And he probably worked more with Le Corbusier than with Kahn, but there are pictures with him and Kahn, so here they are. Maybe they are in Ahmedabad, where, if I understood correctly, Doshi took part in inviting Kahn to build the Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. But from what I understood from him, Kahn was not paid for that work, nor was him. It didn't matter. You see, we are dealing here with passionate people who love architecture, who love culture, and they give themselves to creation. It's not about making a buck. If they wanted to make a buck, they would have practiced something else, not architecture. And in this context, I remember reading that Borromini, the great Baroque Italian architect, he refused to get paid when he built that masterpiece of Baroque architecture, San Carlo alle Quattro Fontane. The church wanted to pay him, and he said, no, you cannot pay me. You cannot pay me working for God. So yes, maybe he was not a needy man, but this does say something that we often forget, especially these days. What architect today, even those very rich and very influential and very successful, can you imagine them saying, no, I don't want to be paid. I work for God. I'm sorry. You cannot pay my work, my labor towards God. No. Now, we can't imagine something like this today. But anyway, let's not idealize the past. This is another picture. On the right, you see Doshi. Of course, you recognize Louis Kahn. You see, he's silent, he listens, he absorbs, and then later on, and not much later actually, because he opened his architecture office, which interestingly was called environmental design, maybe because he had no diploma, I don't know. That's how he called his office, but maybe not just because of that, but because he believes that architecture is connected with everything. So it's part of the environment. It's not just an architectural object. And this is another picture. You see how Doshi looks at him, and it's beautiful. It moves me. It moves me when you see two very important architects. You know, at that time, of course, Khan was great, and Doshi was unknown, but Doshi was learning. And maybe even questioning. If you look at his expression, maybe he was even, but he was absorbing in an intense way what the yogi was telling him. Very nice upbringing. And, you know, he said in an interview that, and you can find lots of very interesting videos about him on YouTube. One of them that I truly recommend, and it's long, that's why I'm not playing it now, it's Breaking the Barriers. You know, where after receiving the Pritzker Prize, he gave a talk, he gave a lecture at the School of Architecture, and you know, he advocated breaking the barriers. In other words, he advocated creativity. And Vatsal is here to tell us, from what I read, the School of Architecture in Ahmedabad, which he founded, doesn't have entrance doors, doesn't have doors, because this was his idea that the creativity shouldn't be blocked. In order to arrive at creativity, you need no walls, you need no breaks. Tell me, Vatsal, did I understood correctly or not?
Yes, yes, Dan. The School of Architecture didn't have any entrance for a long time. Like you could walk through the lawns and enter the building, and the basement level, it was like there was a mound of mud which was excavated for the school, on which they had the lawns, and there was a path between the lawns. You could walk into the building, and the ground floor or basement floor was totally open, so you could walk through it and then take the ramp to the classes on first floor. And it had no entrance till recently. I mean, 10 years back they made a gate and an entrance. Otherwise it was completely open, like anyone could go inside.
Right. Thank you very much. But I read a very moving, and it's part of that video that I mentioned, a very, very nice text that he read, you know, kind of a manifesto where he emphatically stresses what true education is. And true education is not about restrictions, it's quite the opposite. It's about openness, about dialogue, about being together, about learning from each other. And he even talks about obligations which need to take back seat, and it is then that the stars arise. And he has this very poetical language, yes, very nice. But again, I think he learned a lot from those who were older than him. He had the wisdom to listen, just as he listens in this picture. He said that he had an uncle who was a great scholar in Ahmedabad, and he respected this uncle very much. And one day he went to him to show him something he wrote, and the scholar was kind of disappointed and told him, you know, you have to learn how to write. You write here like a carpenter. You don't write like an artist or an intellectual. So he learned how to write like a poet. And I think this was the greatest and is the greatest virtue of Doshi. It's my understanding, you know, from a distance, of course, and I could be wrong, but I think the greatest virtue is that he was listening and he was learning from those he respected, and he absorbed that the wisdom of Kant, the wisdom of Le Corbusier. Of course, they were so foolish sometimes, especially Le Corbusier, but maybe in a good sense of the word. And his uncle also, he respected his grandfather. So he learned from these older men, and then he applied what he learned to his own life. So I think he was a great learner, and maybe he still is. Okay.
Dan, one or two things about Louis Kahn that I've learned from the School of Architecture here, that his office used to do very meticulous drawings. Like if there was a slope of 1 inch on the platform, they would show it in the drawings. And Anant Raje, his disciple here in Ahmedabad, he followed that practice for IIM. They used to have very meticulous drawings, something maybe a little easier today because of computers, but in those times it was very difficult. And second, Khan always stressed on the importance of light coming into the building, natural light, and that seemed to be some his most focused area of work in architecture, at least here in Ahmedabad.
Well, no, not just in Ahmedabad, everywhere. I mean, I'm talking about Khan. But let's, thank you, Vatsal. But let's look at this picture of Doshi, you know. There is a feminine side in him, and there is a dreamer, you know, and he arrived at wisdom, you know, and I like the fact that he has no shoes. Why should, you know, I mean, he's immersed in the culture of his country. Here is a sophisticated man who lived in Paris, who lived in the United States, who was almost friends with Le Corbusier and Kahn, and he absorbed many influences, but he returned to his country with love for his country, and he's very much Indian, and at the same time, he is universal. And I think this is the power of art. You know, and I include architecture here as well. And he's also a dreamer. You can tell the way he looks, you know, upwards. He's probably thinking of his grandfather. I don't know. Anyway, so Doshi isn't a man of grand strokes or monumental architectural statements. From public projects to educational institutes, villas to low-income housing, sorry. I'm sorry. His work reflects the quality of humility and the sensitivity to the site and its people, as if emerging organically from the ground to provide shelter and a perspective on the outside world. He recalls his time with Le Corbusier as a kind of theater that he was witnessing, his childlike curiosity, which is refreshingly evident still. This, I think, we have to underline, his childlike curiosity. This is a great quality if you have, you know, because if you have this curiosity, you learn and you become better as a human being and in what you are doing, and without losing the innocence a child has. So absorbing the current of the times. His buildings in turn are like street plays, a commentary on the culture and politics of a time and people. Perhaps that is why, as we talk this day, wrote, you know, this was published in Apartamento magazine, in a magazine in Italy, while Kamala practices Hindustani classical music in another room, his home feels like home. It has a sense of warmth and familiarity, as if one had been there before or here before. It is a representation of who Doshi is himself, wise, funny, and full of stories that live between reality and mythology, past and present, architecture and life. Beautiful. How many architectures today and in how many countries do we handle simultaneously what we call reality and what we call mythology? Most of the time, mythology is totally absent. and what is reality often for us is the parking lot, the toilet, and all kinds of prosaic functions, including the refrigerator. But what about mythology? What about the past? What about culture? And what about uniting architecture and life on various levels in a complex way and poetical way? So some drawings by, and he also painted. And so his artistic training and his artistic interests are obvious. This is, his home, where books and colors and, images and drawings overlap. Here with a red background is actually, I don't know if he did it, I guess so, but is inspired by Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier has such a page with a sun at the equinox, and the spring equinox and not at the equinox. I think I always confound. Is it the solstice, the summer? No, I think it's the summer solstice and the winter solstice, when the sun is at the highest and the sun is at the lowest. And this was a page from the book by Le Corbusier, Le Poème de l'Angle Droit. So I see here on the wall in his home, still a connection with Le Corbusier. Anyway, so this is by Doshi, and is very Indian, I think, and I like it, it's too bad, today architects don't draw any longer like this, or don't do illustrations or paintings like this. These are not commercial renderings, it's a different kind of, there is architecture, of course, but the way he represents this architecture is unconventional. It is related to a certain pictorial tradition of his own culture, of his own country. And I with all due respect to the incredible sophistications of, high-tech renderings, I admire these renderings, which are subjective, but in a certain way, maybe they are more real than what we call reality, maybe. Here is another, is a fragment actually of the previous image. And you see, like I imagine it is in India to this day, you see human beings and you see animals and you see children playing. And so I like it very much. So what I'm saying, you can represent the reality of your project in many ways. It doesn't have to be with a Renaissance perspective, or with what technology offers you today, the so-called real or objective form of representation. This is another one, again, how many architects would do such renderings today? Not too many. But to me, this is not less real than one that is almost like a photograph taken from, a certain point on the street or whatever. And, if you photograph a building and you are going to see this building, it's his very studio in Ahmedabad. But if you photograph it, you'll never get what he did here. This is a transformation. It is an artistic work that maybe it is more real than the so-called real, and I believe it is. And now we see that, in fact, there are, I had a difficulty. I started, in fact, I have 3 presentations on Doshi, but this one is the most complex and the richest. I found a website where, gathered 15 best works, but actually there are only 13. Or no, there are 15, but 2 of them are projects. They were not built. So I don't know why this title, every architect should visit. You cannot visit, you can visit with the eye and the mind, the project, but you cannot visit the building because the building was not built. Anyway, you are going to see them. So a statement by him at 91. So again, at 91, this is the age when Frank Lloyd Wright, I think, died, if not 92. Anyway, he also lived a long life, Frank Lloyd Wright. So this is what Doshi said. In my grandparents' garden, watching monkeys play, peacocks and peahens dancing, and the tortoise getting comfortable under the winter sun, while we sit and wonder about the miracles of life, is a family ritual. In the evenings, golden light filters through a big neem tree from the garden into the house. My grandfather sits there every day, almost religiously, watching this tree and conversing. I often join him, and then the dialogue begins. Childlike fascination, curiosity, and wonder take over, and logic has no meaning. Please remember, logic has no meaning. This should be remembered by the rationalists. He takes me into a dream world every time through the narration of imaginary stories intertwined with mythology, and the entire atmosphere begins to feel like a theater performance. Engrossed in the words of this storyteller, I lose sense of history, time, and place. I begin to discover the unfathomable world and the magic of life that fascinates me even today at age 91. And it's true, if you watch on YouTube videos with him, you see a man past 90 who is like a child, who is fascinated by this world and by the magic of life. And this is another word we should remember, magic, the magic of life, the poetry of life, which unfortunately the functionalists and the prosaic ones and the rationalists try to kill and almost killed. But life is stronger than them, and so is nature. And here is another artwork by him, or of course it is architecture because he is an architect, but he expresses in the visual language of his culture and his tradition something that is modern, that is contemporary, and that is part of his work and his life. And again, I think we could all do something like this, I remember when I had my first exhibition in New York City, I turned 30 then, so I made a kind of I paid an homage to myself, so to speak, since nobody else did, and they didn't have reasons actually to. I made a drawing. I drew it on the floor on wrapping paper, so heavy brown paper that was meant for wrapping. It was long. It was 90 centimeters wide and more than 2 meters long. So it was almost like the height. In fact, it was higher than or taller than me. So I drew a human being, kind of like the profile of a human being, but that human being or the outline was of a human being was filled with plans and perspectival drawings of my projects. So, it was some kind of a self-portrait in which I incorporated, my projects. So what I'm trying to say is, if you allow imagination and innocence even, and even whimsicality, if you are whimsical, it could be okay, just to be yourself and to express yourself beyond what schools teach you and beyond what the so-called practice teach you and so on. Anyway, but look at this beautiful drawing, with apartments building, with apartments, with houses, there. I truly feel it, here is his spirit, is, in a way, childlike he could have been, of course, the working drawings were not done like this. But he tried to connect architecture with life. And this drawing shows just that, a connection between architecture and life. How dry our works usually are when we have to do so-called very accurate and technical and so-called professional drawings. By the way of professionalism, I think he was both professional and an amateur, but But in the present, we use the word amateur in its pejorative sense. For us, an amateur is someone who is superficial, who is not professional, who is not serious. But we forget that the word amateur comes from Latin, from amare, which means to love. So you are amateur of something that you love. So the connection between the word amateur and love is etymologically inscribed in the very roots of the word. And how many professionals truly love what they do? Yes, they are correct, they are efficient, they are responsible, nobody says they are not, but often they are a little bit cold. And that is because the innocent child who laughed is not there any longer. So I have a problem with professionalism. I mean, it's good to have professionalism, but it's also good to be amateur in the sense to love what you do. And even the word dilettante, you know, comes from delight. How much delight do we have today in our practice of architecture? Not very often, unfortunately. Anyway, another sketch. This I see somehow here the influence of Louis Kahn. He said, Doshi said that he was able to copy, to create plans and sketches and sections and buildings and drawings like Le Corbusier when he worked for Le Corbusier. But he was also able, when he worked with Kahn, to almost mimic Kahn's way of doing architecture, and this is again because he had this quality to absorb influences that matter to him, but and if he remained only there, it would not have been good. But he was also able to absorb those influences and then transform them into himself. He became himself richer by absorbing influences from, as I said, people he admired. Also an interesting perspectival drawing of a street. And you'll see this complex of houses. Another drawing here, you see some influence of European surrealism. And this is a plan, finally a more explicit architectural drawing will arrive at that building. And this, again, here you see to an extent the influence of Le Corbusier, who always placed the sun on the sky and the mountains. But the structures, let's call them architectural structures, are not based on or derived from Le Corbusier. And they are expressionistic and they are very interesting. They almost anticipate the present, no? As some kind of, expressionistic, futuristic towers. An animal, he drew very well. He drew very well. And this was in 1995. So he was, close to, almost 70. Animals again, and this is beautiful about the Indian culture that, not only that it has sacred animals, but animals are not disjuncted from human life. Often on the street, you see motorcycles and cows, and, in a way it's beautiful. The animals are part of the human life. Okay, now we see rethinking the future, B.V. Doshi, the most important projects. And now we begin to look in detail into 13 projects plus 2, which are the 13 have been built. In all of B.V. Doshi's works, we can see a yearning to stay rooted to where he comes from. It's true. The courts, the verandas, the internal gardens, the spaces for community assembly, which form a spine to all his designs, following as some of his best works of the B.V. Doshi, which every person must visit once. Well, this is what someone wrote, neglecting that 2 of them are actually projects. Now, I love this housing, low-cost housing from 1982. when Europe was agonizing and the United States in the deadly embrace of postmodernism, this man was doing architecture that was sensitive, that was modest, and that was not killed by imported historical styles. Postmodernism, I think, was very detrimental to architecture. So he received the Aga Khan Award, a very important award in architecture, in 1996 for this work. They are not houses, but homes where a happy community lives. That is what finally matters. Aranya low-cost housing accommodates over 80,000 individuals. So this is a big town or almost a city, through a system of houses, courtyards, and a labyrinth of internal pathways. The presence of the labyrinth or the maze is also important. And I think the labyrinth today is coming back in architecture and otherwise. And I salute the labyrinth because I like labyrinths. So we begin to see some pictures of this low-cost housing complex. It moves me that here you have a sophisticated architect, although he didn't have a diploma, but he was much more sophisticated than many with diplomas, being actually very eager to serve a population which was poor. And I love this, you know, and with simple means, he does an architecture that is superior as architecture, but where the investment was not big. And it shows that it is possible. You don't need the great amounts of money to do great architecture. You can do great architecture when you have a generous idea and you believe in what you are doing, even with you know, investments which are not flamboyantly big. And I truly think the idealism of Doshi had the chance to work for a program that where it was able to manifest itself. This is again the, you know, the rendering of the street, and you can see everything here, you know. And of course, it is not correct from a Renaissance perspectival point of view. You know, look at that man on the right. If he's a man or a child or a girl on the bicycle upside down, and then you have the chariot, you know, with the animal, and then you have a motorcycle. And I like this. So I truly feel we have to bring back joy into the practice of architecture, and to escape those so-called objective and so-called real representations. Now, architecture can be represented in many ways. An idea, like in the Middle Ages, in illuminated manuscripts, you don't have the so-called scientific perspective. No, in fact, there are drawings, you know, in the Middle Ages where, let's say, you hated someone, and even that, if that someone was in the foreground, you made him very small. And if you loved a girl, you made her very big because you loved her even if she was at the horizon, if she was far away. So, you know, these are subjective relationships which we shouldn't ignore, because subjectivity is part of life, and usually it gives flavor and beauty to life. Look at that tree in the middle, how it is represented. Beautiful. I love this drawing. And you look on, you know, there are hanged clothes, and there are all kinds of things which relate to life. It's not a dead rendering. It's a lovely and lively drawing. Bravo to him. And these are the buildings. Excellent buildings. Who cares that certain details, or that you know, the paint is affected by the elements? The generous idea is there, and the buildings stand and the children play on the street. And who cares they are poor? I mean, yes, poverty is not to be celebrated, but they have a home, and they have a home designed by a great architect. So bravo to him. And he made these drawings, you know, which are, you know, there is of course, it's the 80s. but it's not that deadly postmodernist that embarrassed architectonic culture in Europe and in the United States. There are very discrete references to a certain tradition, but it's still a modern building or a modern complex of buildings. And the way he uses colors is enlightening. Although maybe they ran out of money, they couldn't paint them like this, but it doesn't matter. The integrity of the design is still there. I think spirit is not embarrassed in the vicinity of poverty. No, if you invest a project that doesn't have riches, but invest with love and with spirituality, even with care, with affection, with empathy, it could become a superior work. And look, the children, you know, they are more playful. I mean, how many children do you see on very rich streets in big, you know, so-called, you know, successful cities of the world? Children enjoying themselves like these children on just in this picture. You know, no, I lived in the United States for many years. I didn't see children playing on the street like this. First of all, you can, because there are the cars. And then in some instances, in some parts of the United States, there are not even sidewalks. It's everything for the car. Well, here you have human beings, little human beings, children, you know, telling stories to each other, communicating, looking at each other, talking. Very nice. Maybe I idealize a little bit, but I don't think too much. This is a sketch. It is Doshi, but you see also a little bit of the influence of Le Corbusier, although the architecture has nothing to do with Le Corbusier, actually, but with the culture that he belonged to and he belongs to. Louis Kahn, perhaps you know, he also worked for the poor. In fact, Kahn started his architectural practice doing you know, social housing in Philadelphia. Some of them have been destroyed, unfortunately. Before he became famous, an international architect, he built quite a number of you know, housing units for the disadvantaged in Philadelphia. And I think this is a test. And even Le Corbusier, he dedicated some good years to investigate, you know, how to build homes, well, how to build, you know, some kind of a new home that was also efficient. Yes, he called it machina habitée, the machine for living, but, you know, he was still an artist at bottom, Le Corbusier. And even Wright, in his Broadacre City project, he addressed the problem of, you know, inexpensive or less expensive housing. While the stars of today, very few do this, you know. Frank Gehry doesn't do it. Zaha didn't do it. Rem Koolhaas didn't do it. They do, and they did, you know, penthouses and expensive, you know, buildings for the elite. But to apply their talent to you know, the modesty of a life that was not theirs, they didn't do it. And I think this is a lack. Anyway, I love this street, you know. Yes, look, there are imperfections here, you know, but it's okay, it's life. And it's public life. And I know Doshi claimed that in the present, our buildings do not arrive at the status of heritage because they neglect the publicness that good architecture should address. And he did address it in this project, which was built. He did address it, I think, magnificently, even if it is an architecture that you say, wait a minute, there are so many imperfections and so many problems. No, I see life here. Maybe I am unpardonably subjective, but I see life.
No, but I believe that architecture should be for people in general, not only for the rich ones. So it's absolutely normal to address the less fortunate.
Yes, I agree with you, but the stars of today very rarely do this. And so they forget the very essence of architecture, that you are supposed to
I
serve
believe they
life.
have a certain degree of ignorance, or maybe they, I don't know, maybe they believe they're too good for that.
No, there is no such thing. Quite the opposite. I would say that when one is truly good, I mean, I think it's much more rewarding to work for a community of people
Yeah,
who
but
are less
the
privileged.
way I see, for example, Frank Gehry and his work, I believe that he believes that he's too good for the poor.
No, I wouldn't say so because I don't know. But yes, when you have big commissions for Louis Vuitton or Prada like Rem Koolhaas, you know. But I think it's a lack. It's a lack, and in contrast, I admire Doshi for doing this, and he's not the only one, really, of course. But he was doing something useful here, and I truly feel that an architect who works, who serves life beyond mundanity, achieves perhaps a higher level of being not happy necessarily, this is not the word, but finding accomplishment, and I think he found accomplishment. He did something useful for those who needed talent and who needed sensitivity, because this project could have been done by someone without empathy, just as someone who would have disconsidered from a humane point of view the recipients or the users of these houses. I think it must be very rewarding actually to work on such a project. I would myself work very happily for such a, but unfortunately
I think that for in order to work at such project, you need to have a certain amount of understanding of the needs and the life of those, and to commit a little I don't know, sacrifice from the point of view of economics, and this is why I said that Frank Gehry doesn't seem to have such an understanding, nor Zaha Hadid. I don't know. That's my opinion.
Well, Diana, you don't actually know, but and they didn't have to, but they were also uprooted because Doshi returned to his country, to his roots, while Zaha was born in Iraq and she lived in London, and Frank Gehry was born in Canada.
That's what I was talking about.
Pardon?
That was what I was thinking about, that she was born in Iraq and she should have, but she chose the west side, the capitalism, the money, and the fame.
Well, anyway, maybe she didn't choose wrongly, but anyway, let's not talk about them. Back to Doshi. The Kamala house in India, India, of course, this I took like this. I should have erased India because we are in India, in Ahmedabad from 1959. So these are early works by him. It's a great house. It's modern, but he combines also brick with concrete. It's not just concrete. It's less radical than Le Corbusier, but I think more human. And it has a certain fragmentation, which I also admire. It's not so monumental, and it's good that it's not so monumental. I like what I see. I didn't visit it, but even inside, it's very, it looks a very pleasant house. And this is not a poor house. This is not a house for the poor, but he showed before he can do architecture, doesn't matter, with a low budget, with a higher budget, he can do architecture. And there is the magic of light. This reminds me a little bit of Luis Barragan, the use of primary colors, inside the house and he also, as you saw in the previous project, he wanted to use primary colors also outside, but you know, they maybe ran out of money, I don't know. But he loves color, and of course he loves color, but he also did a lot of drawings in black and white, which I tried to incorporate in the PowerPoint presentation. But I don't know, I couldn't, because the background would turn out black in the PowerPoint presentation. Anyway, he has the soul of an artist, obviously. And on the other hand, I think he was and is an architect quite capable to negotiate with the reality, with clients, with society, maybe with authorities. So he's not, you know, the lonely artist, misunderstood and unable to, you know, address, you know, the complex issues involved in architecture. He's less radical than in a way than both Le Corbusier and Kahn, meaning than the guru and the yogi, but he's more human in a way, and you know, I think this is a great quality, even when he builds for the affluent, because this is obviously a villa for someone with money. Now, we arrive at interesting things. You know, in 1973, he built another housing complex called the Life Insurance Corporation Housing. It almost sounds like we are in the United States. This is also good, and it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter that, you know, there is mold on the facade, that you know, the colors are washed out. It's okay. You know, the spirit of the architectonic spirit is still integral, and it's unaffected really by. What I see in this sketch and in the realized building is the same. Is the same spirit. And if you know, we mentioned Frank Gehry. Well, the sketches of Frank Gehry are very foggy. In fact, you can take one sketch and it goes with almost any building he built. Here is not the same. In this sketch, you recognize this building and not another building. On the other hand, it's done very quickly, and it's spontaneous and it's abstract, but it's is figuratively correct. This is another great housing project, and you see there are, I'm sure he didn't do this, or I think he didn't do this, but it's okay. You know, if the conception or what is going on here, but if the initial conception was strong enough and had authenticity, you know, in time you can add, or the users can add various things. Something of the original impulse remains there. I'm sorry, but this is in no way inferior to the housing complexes that Le Corbusier built, or those built by Kahn. No, it's excellent architecture, I think. A drawing. I mean, I fragmented it like this because it was long. I hope, no, I don't have the whole of it. But anyway, here you see the illustrator, Doshi, but he's taking, you know, certain liberties here. You know, it's a drawing that is both correct and lyrically elusive somehow. And I like this. Look how he represents the cars. It's okay, it's fine. And some views from this complex. It's, you know, you could say, well, what's so great here? I think it is. You know, it's okay. Okay, maybe it was not built incredibly well, or, you know, there are, you say, interventions here and there. It's all right. It don't bother me. Here is an idealized drawing, you know, the facade we already saw. you see the sun. I imagine it is the sun and not the moon. He said that for him the sun is immensely important. Is the most important, and so it was for Le Corbusier. I actually think that you know, what appears to be poverty for me is refreshing. I see hope in these images, but I don't see hope in those you know, sleek you know, housing complexes built now in affluent cities, you know, which are so miserably distant. And now this is, I do see hope. Sorry, maybe you could say that I have the wrong perceptions or I have an upside down psychology, but I do see hope, because from here I can go further. I can continue. It's not a dead end street. To me, this is even superior. Sorry, I like Fujimoto, but you know, the aesthetical exasperations of Fujimoto, you know, an opulent society building, you know, buildings that sit on top of sloping roofs and so on, and you know, people. Yeah, I don't know. It's some kind of exasperation here and there. There's some kind of you know, how to say, even decadence. But here I see no decadence. This is real life with its problems, with its beauty, with its imperfections, with its poverty, but also with the warmth maybe of the relationship, the human relationships. Maybe I idealize, but maybe not. Anyway, now we arrive at his own office or studio built in Ahmedabad in 1980s. And you know, I can only envy him, because I will never have such an office. In fact, I don't have any office. But I am happy, on the other hand, that he was able to build it, and I'm sure it was very pleasant, and it is very pleasant to work there. You know, it's called an emblem of Doshi philosophy, at least by this article I took it from. It is, you know, obviously he's doing well. He was doing well in the 80s. You know, it's a campus. It's impressive. It's almost like, if not more, like Teliers and West by Frank Lloyd Wright. And in fact, he was doing better than Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier would have never afforded something like this. So he retired to Le Cabanon, you know, just at the edge of the Mediterranean Sea. This is very nice here, I confess. And you know, so he did become a king, you know. I mean, if you look at this campus, you would say, you know, there is a king here who lives here. Artworks and renderings of his projects on the walls, and nature is always beautiful, and the light is beautiful, the way it enters the, you know, the space, and then the primary colors. And then outside also is architecture, and the trees and the garden, and everything is nice. Anyway, and you see now, you'll see images of his working space within this, you know, camp, if we can call it so. But there is also, you know, he took some risks here. You know, there is some kind of formal adventure that took or takes place here. So this was done 40 years ago. So he was 50 or 51 or so. You see the references, of course, of the yogi. You know, this is Salk Institute by Khan. Yes, small gestures of you know, affection for or acknowledgement even, but it's not a pastiche. You know, it remained with him. It's a memory in a way of, and it was a kind of discreet homage to the yogi in this case. the sketch is very sensitive. Now you see there are monitors there, so you know he's computerized now, you know, like everybody else. But it's a generous space, and I imagine people work with pleasure there. And here is the master contemplating, you know. Although he is a social figure, I also feel he values introversion and being alone. Of course, he has a large family, but I saw many pictures with him being alone and kind of, you know, introverted in a way. So this is a view from the top of the camp. So there are 8 volts, and you know, number 8 has the ambition to refer to wholeness. Who cares that the construction is using primitive means? The impetus for the building was not primitive, and the end result is not primitive. And here are the, you know, the employees. Interesting, you know, the women are on one side and the men on the other side. Or maybe it's just an accident. But also women seem to have smaller desks, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm mistaken. But, but they have bigger monitors. At least the one in the middle has a huge monitor. Anyway, I don't know, maybe that ladder goes to where the god lives or the master, I don't know. Nice. So this one, now we arrive at a very interesting thing. I like this work by him, and Vatsal, maybe he can tell us, he visited it, he even took pictures of it. It is an art gallery built for a specific artist. You see the name there, I don't know if I pronounce it well, Fida Hussain. And I think it's an excellent project, although Vatsal told me that, you know, they had to build another one with straight lines, you know, to be able to display the artworks. But in terms of architecture, but also in terms of uniting art with architecture, this is excellent, and you see the images. So this building was designed to demonstrate the collaboration between an artist and an architect. An underground gallery housing the works of the artist Maqbul Fida Hussain. Doshi's design was inspired by a discussion between the two that occurred 30 years prior to the project. You see again the listening child. He remembered a discussion the two had 30 years prior to the project. It was about a response to climate and the benefits of interred spaces. In designing the landscape and entrance, the architect connects the building to the extended world. And this is the building. It's called the cave. And it's a cave, but at the same time is a futuristic building, you know, and the artist painted that black snake on the roofs because he wanted to have a sinuous line there, and I think it was a good decision. Anyway, it was, I think, a good collaboration between the architect and the artist. And I imagine this is the entrance door. Again, with the intervention of the artist, and the architect provided the space and the artist provided the artworks. So it's a nice conjunction, and the trees are happy and the visitors are happy, and Vatsal was happy when he visited it. I thought of creating, you know, a gathering here on Zoom called Architecture and Prehistory, the Cave Revival, because there are important architects today who kind of revive the cave, and Doshi is one of them. So now you see the project that he did, and which is even called the cave. and it's very well done. Maybe there are some influences from Gaudi. This time he didn't meet Gaudi, he didn't work with Gaudi, but I'm sure he valued Gaudi. It's a good building, I like it. And the artworks of the artists are also interesting. So I think it's a very interesting work. So the artworks are by the artist, not by the architect. So architecture and art complement each other. And the light that enters from above is also the appropriate light. It's nice. I think it's a very nice work. And even during construction is very nice. I like this low technology, which, because the final expression is not low technology. And the plan is interesting too. It's kind of like, I have a beautiful book called Primitive Architecture, which is magnificent and is much more joyous than the so-called, educated architecture. No, primitive architecture is beautiful. This is not primitive at all. It's by a very educated and sophisticated architect, but it's childlike, it's innocent, it's playful, and it works. And it works, even the dog seems to be, protecting the space and kind of at peace with himself here. Good work. Very good work, Mr. Doshi. I almost felt like saying that the person on the right seems to be Vatsal, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, this is how it looks from above. Excellent. And you see the black snake that was painted by the artist. And yeah, this is what you get when you have a good meeting between an artist and an architect, and you have playfulness. Now the School of Architecture, now Vatsal is supposed to talk about this. He did talk already a little. He studied here. And so I do have to say this. Doshi didn't have and doesn't have a diploma from a School of Architecture, but he founded a School of Architecture. So beautiful. That's how he took revenge in a way on his situation. So he founded this School of Architecture and he even built the buildings. So bravo to him. Here there are no doors at the entrance in the building because this is his wish and understanding that education happens when, openness happens. And I believe he's true. He's right. Very interesting, these two stairs, I like this. It's very unusual, but I think very, very inspired. It's both monumental. It's, in a way, they represent metaphorically the growth towards knowledge, towards becoming educated. And the two-ness, to use a word invented by Peter Eisenman, TWONESS, so two-ness, because you have two stairs, maybe refer, I am speculating here, to that ur plant that Goethe was searching for in the Black Forest, because he said any seed, anything that generates life has to have two elements within. So he saw that the ur plant, the original plant from which all other plants were born, had this duality in. And here I see these two stairs somehow, evoking that doubleness or that two-ness that Eisenman talked about. I love this picture. I think it's very, very nice. No, it's a very interesting work. And here is Doshi with his students in a circle, very important. Doshi is not in the center on a pedestal, but he's sitting like with the students in conditions of democracy and equality, and he's a student just like everybody else. You see, he's as young as the others, and it's very, very nice.
Yeah, Dan, those are the north lawns. That's the mud excavated when the building was built, and the site probably given to him was an old kiln, a place which excavates to make bricks. So the site was already a kind of pit, and he built the school using that feature. So the lower basement, you see, it's entirely open, and the middle portion is the classes, and the top is the north light, the natural light that enters the classes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, very nice. We move forward. I see we are now much less people than at the beginning. I was hoping my presentation is not boring, but maybe people cannot concentrate on more than half an hour or 45 minutes these days. Anyway, this is an image in a classroom, in a studio. Making a campus for creative learning, very nice. That's how it should be, a campus for creative learning. And he said, I read that, or I watched in an interview that he was meandering the routes, the roads that to create the conditions for a possible chance encounters between students and teachers and so on. Very nice.
Dan, if you go back one slide, I can explain the section.
Okay.
Yeah, this one. This, if you see, that's the lower basement with all those beams. Then that's the first floor class with the north light, and the second floor class with the north light. And second floor overlooks the first floor. So you can see the students. The students can see their colleagues below, in the classroom below. That's how it is. But there was a problem of acoustics, because you could hear the class which was going on downstairs. So some of the teachers who had to take lectures, they took it at some other place, while the studio was conducted here.
Right.
Those are two classrooms overlooking each other.
Thank you very much, Vatsal. Thank you. It is very useful to know this. Now, the National Institute of Fashion from 1988, this time in New Delhi, at first I didn't quite like it because of that glass part, but then I kind of changed my mind because I saw other pictures that I liked. I like this fragmentation in various parts of the building, so they don't, it's not a monolith. And there is this connection with courtyards and steps and so on. It's nice. Plus, being about fashion, maybe that glass refers to fashion in a way. I don't like fashion very much, but I mean, I don't like glass very much, this kind of glass, but no, it's not a bad building. Now, the Tagore, I'm talking about the great Indian poet Tagore. He did the Memorial Theatre in Ahmedabad in 1967. Here I see some connection with, or some resemblance to Japanese architecture done around that time by certain architects like Enzo Tange or Kikutake or even Isozaki. It's a big building, and again, I love the presence of the animals. If I didn't have a certain age, I think I would love to live in India. Because I don't know, as Doshi said, he said, we Indians, we are very social beings. We always move. We gather. There are many things happening, and there is a connection between human beings and animals and trees and buildings and so on. courtyards. But the building is, it's called by some brutalist. In fact, some of his works are called as being brutalist works, but brutalism is kind of becoming fashionable now. There is even a book called SOS Brutalismus, and there were exhibitions in Vienna and in other places dedicated to brutalism. So to concrete mainly. Well, lots of motorcycles there. I wonder what Tagore would have felt about them. Inside, yeah, it's sculptural, the space. And you see how different his buildings are, Now, the Indian Institute of Management from Bangalore from 1992, inspired by traditional maze-like Indian cities and temples, IIM Bangalore is organized as interlocking buildings, courts, and galleries. It also provides a variety of spaces protected from the hot climate and infuses greenery through semi-open corridors and gardens. Well, as I keep saying, if you put ivy on buildings, even the ugliest building becomes nice. Here, it's magnificent. You have nature and the work of man together, and there are some very interesting spaces. And I think this building has to be seen in person there to truly understand it and feel it. And I like the way the plants are attacking the wall, so to speak, or attaching themselves to the walls. That the nature is abundant and luxurious almost. And it's a very interesting and very human work because of the maze and the materials he uses. And look at this courtyard, it's almost magical with the exterior circulations and the trees inside and the openings between various parts of the buildings. Very nice. And the view from the top is not very large, the picture, but you can still see something. And I love these pictures, I almost like photographic artworks. They are. Here you have the magic of light and shadow, and that's it. But now, and architecture, of course. Now, the Institute of Indology in Ahmedabad from 1959, so this is an earlier work. It makes me think a little bit of some early works by Kenzo Tange in Japan, who was also labeled as being a brutalist. But this is, the sensitivity behind this so-called brutal concrete is not brutal at all. I think it's very well designed, and it's a convincing building even for the author, because you see him drawing it. I imagine that's what he does. Anyway, so designer Doshi, location Ahmedabad. But here I see 1992, that's not what I saw. It was begun, I see there 62, so maybe it was refurbished or something. And the inside also is very well done, I think. That concrete is not so well kept, but it's okay. Now the Electronics Corporation of India, another housing project, and I think he was very good at this, and it shows his understanding of living communally, creating a sense of community, having multiplicity in unity. I think this is a great quality he had and has. the language, the architectural language is abstract, but there is this magical multiplicity in unity, and built with simple means, obviously not with a big budget. But the conjunction between the buildings and the trees is magnificent. And what is also magnificent is there are not the present day asphalted roads. You have the earth from which the buildings spring. And nice. And that stair here in the foreground is intriguing. There are no really sidewalks. I like it. Now, this is a theater in Ahmedabad from 1976. A good theater is the extension of the most active and creative part of a city. It is a place where all artists meet and recreate a new image of life. Designed as a public theater, this hall, a largely concrete building, houses an auditorium, vast interior corridors, and public gathering spaces. I don't know, this facade is a little bit monumental, but it is balanced by something else, and you'll see, like a market, kind of like a bazaar, at least during some days, if not always. This is through and through, modern building. Yes, you see at the bottom, an activity that is much less monumental, but very lively.
Then there is a square in the middle. Right now, Doshi's even designed that square. This is probably before this is before that design took place. So the building has a kind of protrusion, a balcony which overlooks the square. That is the idea of this design. But unfortunately, people could not approach that balcony on the top in the theater. I've seen a couple of plays here when I was a child. Right now, this theater is closed down.
Thank you, Vatsal. I understood, I don't know, a big corporation or so wanted to buy this, or maybe even bought it. Anyway, now this is another, you saw this one, but these are new images. I don't know, maybe he worked in two phases. I'm a little bit confused, but I love very much. I love what I see here. I would gladly live in such a house. It almost looks Mediterranean. Very, very nice. I mean, those kids are lucky to live in such a... Now, the National War Museum and Memorial in New Delhi, this is a new work, from 2016. It is a project. I don't think it was built. It's just the project that I only have this image. So he was already, 89 years old. And the last image will be the next one, his proposal for the Guggenheim Museum in Helsinki, which he didn't win, but he participated in 2014. So he was, how old? 80, almost 85, 84 years old. And this was his proposal. I only have this image. I see a lot of people there, and even ballet dancers in the maybe I think he neglected a little bit that Helsinki is in a cold country, and what I see here is more like India. I see lots of people there, but in a kind of a warm climate. But Helsinki is not warm anyway, unless for a very short time during the summer. That's it. Thank you very much.